Thank you for joining us on We Love San Diego. Our host, Ryan McFadden, is one of the most in-demand evangelists today. As an actor who shared the screen with the likes of Robin Williams and Don Johnson, and later became part of the MTV Comedy Tour, Ryan had his life mapped out in front of him. But through the power of the gospel, God radically changed his life and perspective to go on from being served to serving. Today, Ryan and his wife Rose run one of the premier Christian outreach organizations in the country called WeLuvSanDiego, as they bring church to the people, bringing hope to the hopeless, and serving those that society often turns a blind eye towards. Join us today as Ryan shares a message of hope that we believe will impact your life and inspire you to live the life that God is calling you to live. Now, here's your host of We Love San Diego, Ryan McFadden.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today on We Love San Diego. I pray that today's show blesses your life and that God reveals a truth to you that only He can. Well, my guest today is someone that's really, really special to me. In fact, he's someone that I guess in essence I grew up with. We went to high school together. He was someone that he hung out with my brother quite a bit as well. In fact, I vividly remember where he would stand during, say, lunchtime at high school. We called it the quad. And my brother and his crew, they would hang out in front. So he would basically just be standing behind where we were at. And I vividly remember that, even though it's been several years. I won't say how many. It's been more than a few. But I still remember that like it's so vivid in my brain. And that's why I'm so excited just to bring him on today. He really does have a history with me in our hometown, but I'm not bringing him on because of that. I'm bringing him on because he has such a unique, amazing story. I can tell you a little bit about him now. Mat Stice, who's our guest, he is a pastor at We Are Church. He's the men's ministry director of New Life Dream Center in Bethel Island, California. He's married to his amazing wife, Angelica. He has 3 boys. And when you hear that, you say, boy, that's a dream for so many people. Like, that is a cookie cutter pastor. He's married, 3 kids, all boys. Like, man, this is amazing. But why I have him on the show is because it wasn't always that way. Oh, he had such an amazing, amazing transformation. In fact, he was featured on the TLC TV show called Cracking Addiction, as Matt's life was spinning completely out of control, and until he had that radical transformation that brought him to the place he is today. And without any further ado, I want to welcome Mat Stice to our show, We Love San Diego here. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ryan. Thanks for having me. It is a huge blessing to come on this show and just share with everybody what God's done in my life. It's kind of mind-blowing for me still, thinking about, Him coming and changing me the way He has and getting a hold of my heart. It's just a huge blessing, especially from where my selfish outlook took me to where I am now. So I thank you for this opportunity to share a little bit of my testimony.
Yeah, we would love to hear that. And, again, I'm someone, I remember you really from my freshman year of high school. So this is going back a while. And again, I know who you were back then. And there was a lot of your story that I wasn't aware of until I actually watched the TV show. But just seeing this transformation that could not be more real is just amazing to me. So I'm excited because I know that there's going to be people that are listening to this show that are in the place now that you used to be. And I want them to hear your testimony and just really inspire them, give them hope that there is still hope for them, that there is still a chance to get out of where they're at and get to where they really want to be. So I'm going to stay out of your way. Would you be willing to share your testimony? And then when you're done, I'll ask you a few questions, and I'll stay out of your way for the rest of the testimony here.
Yes, I would love to. This is a testimony of God's saving power that can happen in a person's life. And, I want to start with Revelations 12:11. And they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by their testimony. And they did not love their life so much that they were afraid to die. And I love that last part. The first part's quoted, I think, more than the last part. And I want to remember not to go back to loving my life so much that I forget about what God's done for me. I want Luke 9:23 to be at the forefront of my life when it says, then he said to them, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow after me.
Yeah.
So it's just a great opportunity. I'll start from the beginning. I was born on June 16th, 1976 in San Leandro, California, the Bay Area, Northern California. When I was 2 years old, I moved to Pittsburgh, California, the town we're both from. And I lived there my whole life. I ended up going to high school there, and it's so cool. It's a cool city. You can get in a lot of trouble here, don't get me wrong, but it's a melting pot, you know. There's so many different races, and looking back now, it sure has taught me a lot of life lessons and, priceless things that I'm just so thankful that God chose for me to grow up in Pittsburgh. And I didn't always feel that way, of course, but I feel that way now. I live in a blue-collar, middle-class home right here in 1226 Stevens Drive, Pittsburgh. Two loving parents, a hardworking dad, a nurturing mom, the classic middle child. I have an older brother named Daniel, a younger sister named Julie, a very healthy and protected childhood. You know, it's interesting to point that out because not everybody who falls into addiction comes from a broken home and has just crazy things happen to them as childhood. Like, I had nothing happen to me crazy. I was just a very blessed childhood, and I want to make that point because it's not always the opposite, you know. I did find sports at a young age, and what I start to notice is just looking back how selfish and self-centered I am by nature. You know, the Bible breaks that down, and playing sports and competing, and it really built up my ego and my pride. But at the same time, I can remember being super self-conscious. Fear, I noticed in my life in different forms, you know, just consuming fear, so concerned about what people thought of me. But the thing about it is I didn't realize back then that my spirit was sick. And that's such an important point, that because I was living a self-centered life with a self-centered outlook and doing what pleased Matt became the center of the universe, and living that way will make a person's spirit sick.
Yeah.
So that's just something that I didn't even realize back then. And so, you know, a huge turning point in my life was after going to a smaller Christian school. So I raised in a Christian home from kindergarten to 8th grade, you know, relatively sheltered, and then went this huge culture shock. I ended up going to a public school for the first time in my life, and Pittsburgh High School. And so talk about fear and self-conscious, already dealing with those things that because of that, I mean, it just went through the roof at this point. And a lot of people wouldn't even notice that about me. As I talk to my friends, I tell them how much fear I have, and they were just so blown away because I was very outspoken and very loud and tried so hard to fit in and be cool. But this fear was very consuming. And then right around 10th grade, what I found to fix that fear and that being self-conscious and those things was the first time I drank a beer, a 40-ounce beer. I'm from the 90s, so that was popular back then. A 40-ounce beer gave me this ease and comfort, a counterfeit feeling of treating that sick spirit that I had and this peace that I was like, I felt whole inside. I was like, oh my gosh. And quickly, in a matter of a couple months, that turned into a daily thing. I was chasing that feeling every single day within a couple months. And I just don't think that's normal. I know a lot of people struggle with addiction themselves, but a lot of people don't. So it's just one of those things that grabbed a hold of me so fast. So we're talking about 16 years old in 10th grade. And then around that time, of course, my mom was bringing us to church my whole life, but I started to go to church in Concord called Full Gospel. And I met a guy there named Chip G who showed and modeled for me what a man of God was. I didn't have a relationship with Jesus at all. I just went to the youth group, played basketball, had a really good experience in that sense. He knew I was smoking weed. He would talk to me about smoking weed. And it's just such a pivotal point in my life because one night at a youth camp that I went to with that church, I got caught smoking weed. And this guy, Chip, he had a decision to make. Is he going to send me home and call my mom, or is he going to let me stay? Well, he let me stay, and that night in worship, he comes to me crying and says, Matt, God has a plan for your life, a plan for your life. And he spoke that over my life, and I never forgot that. And so, unfortunately, a couple more decades went by before those seeds actually took root and planted in my life. So as time went on, my disease progressed. I know it to be a disease now, a threefold disease. I'm sick in my mind, my body, and my spirit. And I'll go into more of that later. But it progressed from alcohol and weed to coke and ecstasy. Right around 2021, the bar scene was so fun. Walnut Creek, San Ramon, San Francisco turned into the club scene. So a lot of fun during those years, a lot of wild living and fun. And eventually, though, it all caught up to me in a bigger way when I was prescribed Vicodin for the first time. So I kid you not, I had a sore throat. I went in to see the doctor, and they prescribed me Vicodin for a sore throat. And that feeling that I got from Vicodin outweighed the feeling I got from alcohol, from weed, from coke, from anything else. And that feeling of that opiate really grabbed a hold of me. And for the next 15 years of my life, it really ran the show. I mean, I tried everything. I tried to move to Chico, to Vegas, to Tennessee. I tried to change girlfriends. I tried to change jobs. I tried to go get loans to get new cars. I had my first son, Kenny, about that time. And just nothing was fulfilling me. And the feelings I would get from the drugs and alcohol, they weren't quite fulfilling like they once were. They weren't working as well as they did. And that's the thing. It's a double cross. This addiction's a double cross. And coming to this place in my life, I'm in my late 20s, turning 30, and I'm in this place of just complete hopelessness. I had tried to change. I had tried different things, but I had met my match. I was a slave to these drugs and alcohol, and I couldn't see a way out. So I was just getting deeper and deeper and deeper. And before I knew it, I wound up 36 years old, homeless. I moved on from Vicodin to OC to shooting heroin and shooting meth. And I found myself in Richmond, California, in the most dirtiest, gutterest, in flop houses, putting myself in danger and just destroying everything good in my life. I had my future wife, Angelica, with me at the time. We had met years prior, and she was out there with me. We were shooting dope. I mean, we just got so bad. We found out she was pregnant. We couldn't stop using. Family members pleaded with us. We had opportunities here and there, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And leading up to June 13th, 2012, God's grace was on my life that day. My sister called me out of the blue and said I could come see my son Kenny at my mom's house, which was weird because I wasn't allowed over at my mom's. I had burned that bridge. I wasn't allowed to see my son Kenny. That's how pitiful and bad things had gotten for me. But they called me that day to come over and see Kenny. And as I walked into my mom's house right here, the house I'm in right now doing this interview, I sat on her couch, and the next thing I noticed, it was me and Angelica, my wife, who's my wife now. We got bombarded by video cameras and people we don't know. They just rushed in the room with these cameras in our face, and we're like, what is going on? What the heck is this? And come to find out that was the camera crew of the TLC group for the show that we were on. And, of course, it caught us off guard. But through that process, we were offered to go to these top-notch treatment facilities. So just because we were on that show, by God's grace, her mom contacted Dr. Phil. Dr. Phil's son was booting this show on TLC, and they really wanted Angelica because it was a good story. Nursing school dropout, 22 years old, pregnant, shooting dope, come from a good family. And so they picked up the show, and it wasn't, they didn't want me to be a part of it at all. They said, that's the older drug dealer boyfriend. Let's get him away. He's no good for her. But because we wouldn't come back to her family's house in Chino Hills, they had to call my parents and do the show up here in Pittsburgh, California, and threw me in on the show at the last minute.
Wow.
Yeah. At the last minute, God's grace. I was there. It was going to be get him out of the picture, and whatever was going to happen to me was going to happen to me. And that's the loving, compassionate God that we serve. And that word that was spoken over me in youth camp came to be 20 years later. It came to be. And so praise the Lord.
That's, it's so fun. It's so funny you say that. Sorry, I don't mean to cut off your testimony, because that was one of the things when I was watching that episode on the TV show, and I don't mean this in a rude sense, and please don't take it the wrong way, but when I was watching it, that was kind of the vibe I got, that, everyone's like, okay, we need to get this girl away from this guy who's ruining her life. And she decides first, I'm going to go to rehab. But the impression that I had, and maybe it was just me, but I don't think it was just me, is that they're going to ask you, and there's not a chance. There's no way that you're going to actually agree to do this, and she's going to leave. She's going to leave you. She's going to go get clean, and then you were going to be stuck as is. And when they ask you that question, like, are you willing to go? Assuming that the answer is obviously going to be no. You actually shock the world, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go. So, I mean, like, taking us back to that moment in time, like, what's going on in your head at that moment? Like, are you in this mental battle of, I don't know if I'm going to go, I don't know if I want to go, or are you like, all right, this is an answer to my prayer that I actually have an open door to change my life, and I need to change my life? Like, take us back to that moment. Like, what is going through your head as you have cameras and the TV show is being filmed literally live on that spot?
Yeah, it wasn't much of a mental battle at that point, which is so interesting, because if whoever gets a chance to watch the show, you'll see when they first barge in and we catch us off guard, we're shocked. I initially try to walk off.
Yeah.
And I try to tell my girlfriend at the time, my future wife, pregnant with my son, let's get out of here. Stand up. Let's go. So we had wanted help for the last year, really solid, and we had no idea how to get help. It just was out of our mental capacity to know that there was a way. And then this happens, this opportunity happens, and initially, even wanting help, I stand up just in human nature and say, let's get out of here, and almost self-destruct that opportunity that God gave us. And I'm just so aware of that now, because I work with people, and try to help them get sober. And I watch that same mentality time and time again. And I'm just like blown away, like God's grace on my life. And someone got in front of us. My sister stopped me, and the guy that did the show, Brandon, stopped my wife, Angelica, and said, just come back and listen, just listen. So it's just astounding that although we wanted help, there was something in us that tried to self-sabotage.
Yeah. But I see that so often. I think that there's so many times where God has that encounter with us, and we have an opportunity to go right or left. And we can go God's path, but there is that pull. That is such a strong pull that we can also, because we have free will, because we're not made as robots, that it's not like automatically God says, all right, here's your opportunity, and we just automatically start to walk that path. That there is that opportunity that you can choose the wrong thing. And that's going. It's seeing that. That's why I love your reaction when they come in, because. And I encourage check out this show. You can watch it on YouTube now. It's again Matthew Stice. If you just put that into YouTube, and you'll see his story. The show was Cracking Addiction on TLC. Your reaction is so genuine and so real. Like, I don't want to be here. I need to get out of here. And I exactly like you said. Like, let's just get out of here. And you think about this. What if in that moment of time, Angelica's like, yeah, let's go. And you guys get in that car and you're never, like, you're gone. Like, who knows what that story looks like,
It's just so crazy to think, I had my little drug sack already planned and hooked up. My plan was to come visit my family, eat, see my son, selfish as ever, of course, go get that sack that I had hooked up. So we already had like a plan set in place, which, doesn't compare to what God was offering, of course, but when you're in that mindset, you just aren't thinking clearly. And that's what I get a chance to share with others, because what I didn't know at the time was this was going on too. Ephesians 6:12 For we are not fighting against flesh and blood enemies, but against evil rulers and authorities of the unseen world, against mighty powers in the dark world. So my selfish outlook and actions opened the door, which I didn't even realize, to the gravity of the devil coming in my life, and opened myself up to evil spirits and things, addiction and all these things. And 2 Corinthians 2:11, it says, so that Satan will not outsmart us, for we are familiar with his evil schemes. See, I wasn't familiar with his evil schemes back then, and I almost got outsmarted because of my pride and defensiveness. Hey, come on, we're out of here. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
So I don't have the words to explain that except ignorant and a bunch of other stuff, but it's just very alarming.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always the counterfeit. There's always that other opportunity to go against what God wants you to do. And I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it time and time again. And it's amazing to me that you, when everyone expects you to say no, you said yes. When everyone thinks, okay, this guy is not going to do it, he's just going to go back to his life, it's like, no, I'm ready to do it. And that was what just grabbed me, because it was just so amazing to see that, and just to see that you shocked the world with that answer of something that no one's expecting. And we only have a few minutes left here, and I'm going to bring you back next week. I want the audience to know Matt's story is so impactful that we have to make 2 shows out of this. So I'm going to bring you back next week. I probably should ask that first. Are you able to come back next week with us? But I'd love to bring you back and ask a lot more questions. But really the question that is on my mind, and something you just touched on, is when you're in the middle of this, I've never experienced it, so I'm talking without knowledge, having gone through it. When you're in that dark time, when you're in that moment of addiction, like, are you thinking clearly enough to say, I know I need to change this, I know I need to get out of this, but you just kind of seem like every single day you fall back into that trap? Or is it just a feeling like you have no control over your body, almost like your body is leading you to do things whether you want to do them or not? Like, what is that moment like? Like, what does it feel like?
It's exactly like that. There's a point where I may have had more control and more willpower, but I lost that. I went too far deep into the spiritual realm of darkness that I lost control. And I didn't even have a choice. And I didn't know none of this until I went to the program at Origins in South Padre Island, Texas, the place that the show sent me, and I learned this. I learned that I had a threefold disease. That's what addiction is. I'm sick in my mind, my body, and my spirit. And so I don't have a choice whether to use or not after a certain point, and then I don't have control over it at all. So it reminds me of Matthew 12:29, right, where it says, it takes a stronger man than Satan, who had me as his possession after a certain point, to come in and pull Satan's possession, which was me, out from his grasp and set me back on solid ground. So then now God gives me back control through his spirit, the self-control that comes from God, because I lost that.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people that have literally lost the power to choose whether they're going to use or not, which I had a hard time wrapping my mind around that when I first heard that. And I had no control, for sure.
Yeah, so, I mean, you're in a moment where it's like your body is just leading you, whether you want to go that path or not. You just don't have the control. And that's, I think, something that's unique, because I think a lot of people that don't suffer with addictions just look at someone that does and say, why don't you just stop? Like, there's a pastor, Steve Smotherman, who has a mega church over in New Mexico. And I remember us talking with him. We were playing golf. And he made that comment to me, just stop. But you've shown that it's harder to do that. So, Matt, I'm going to bring you back next week. Like I said, your story's great, and I want more people to hear it. So come back next week with us, and we're going to finish up this story with Matt. But thank you so much for being with us here today, and we'll tie this up next week.
Thank you for joining us for We Love San Diego with Ryan McFadden. We pray that this message has blessed your life. If you'd like to learn more about We Love San Diego or to partner with us, visit WeLuvSanDiego.org. Spelled WeLuv Sandiego.org. That's WeLuvSanDiego.org. For additional messages, find us on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts at We Love San Diego. Also, if you live in the San Diego area, you can find out where and when the next outreach event is by following We Love San Diego on Facebook and Instagram. We so value you listening to our show today and hope you tune in next Sunday at 9 a.m. as we bring another message of hope to you and your family. And as Brian always says, find a need and fill it. Find a hurt and heal it. This has been We Love San Diego.
There's jewelry, and then there's jewelry by Isabella Rose Design Company. Isabella Rose Design Company makes handmade jewelry for a cause. All their sales go towards fighting human trafficking. Using polymer, clay, and precious metals, their modern jewelry designs have helped them become one of the fastest growing jewelry companies in the world. Feel good and look good knowing that you're making a difference in the area of human trafficking. Visit them today at IsabellaRoseDesign.co. That's IsabellaRoseDesign.co.
When the COVID-19 pandemic struck, We Love San Diego sprung into action, giving out over 30,000 pounds of food and supplies, as well as over 50,000 diapers to those in need. Today, the outreach continues as they give out over 60,000 pounds of food and supplies to over 10,000 families who otherwise wouldn't know where their next meal was coming from. Visit WeLuvSanDiego.org to help out and become the hands and feet of Jesus. That's WeLuvSanDiego.org.